Houston has always, since 1836, never really been a majority. It's always been a melting pot. It's always been a third of like different populations. And that's because it's always been a very welcoming city. So when you're a city that has somewhat of an even playing field, right? Houston doesn't really care how much money you have or who your pedigree, your family is. All we care about in Houston is if you're willing to come here and work hard, then you're welcome.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Spotlight Houston, where we bring you the best of the people, places, and events in the Greater Houston region. This week, we're replaying an episode that originally aired on July 2nd, 2023. We sat down with Mr. McKinney, Marketing Director for the Heritage Society. Remember, we publish new episodes every Monday. Spotlight Houston is a production of Story Zone Media. And now your host, Blanca Quezada.
Hi, and welcome. I am so excited to have the one and only Mr. McKinney on the show today because he's the most knowledgeable person that I know about Houston's history. And he's also so much fun. He's here to tell us all about the Heritage Society. So, Mr. McKinney, it's great to have you here. We have a lot to talk about. But first, I want everyone that hasn't heard of you to know who you are because you're so knowledgeable about everything that's happened in Houston over a couple of centuries. So I know that you're one of Houston's ambassadors through Houston First, and you get to host international journalists that visit our city. Plus, you also work with many organizations. He had several historical boards and nonprofits, and he is the Heritage Society's board marketing director. But I think, Mr. McKinney, maybe most people know you for your yellow open-air bus, the school bus, that can be seen around the city, where you give our visitors and also our residents tours of all of Houston historical sites around town. And you've been doing that since 1988, right?
No, the school bus is actually 88. I've been doing it professionally since 2002. Mr. McKinney's Historic Houston was launched January 22nd, 2002. But overall, I've been doing this all my life, and I'm a native Houstonian. And it's an honor to be on the show, and I'm so excited to be able to talk about the Heritage Society and, you know, what we do. And Mr. McKinney's Historic Houston and the Houston History Bus have partnered up with the Heritage Society for numerous years now. And yeah, it's just a great experience. And being plugged into Houston's history, different organizations, including the public libraries, Julie Addison Building. I serve as the president of the Friends of the Texas Room. And the archives that we have there also connect with lots of the exhibits that we do over at the Heritage Society. It's just a magical place. And it really goes back to 1954. It goes back to the idea of trying to save the oldest home in Houston on its original site, the 1847 Kellum-Noble House. And this particular home is a 2-story brick structure on site over at the Heritage Society in Sam Houston Park. And it's been there since 1847 with actual bricks made from Buffalo Bayou. Nathaniel Kellum was a avid businessman in this area. And that was the property that he settled on. That's the property that he built his home on. But that particular house also served as a location for the original Parks Board, Parks Department. And then the City of Houston Zoo was located on property for a few years before moving out to its historic current site at Herman Park in 1923-22. So it's a lot of history all happens in our downtown beautiful park that most people don't even know about. They're kind of oblivious to this little hidden treasure that's in downtown Houston. So I've been excited to be on the board for almost 10 years now, very active on numerous committees, and just what we do there is very special.
Well, before we talk a little bit more about the Heritage Society, what made you or what inspired you to become such a passionate historian, especially Houston's history?
You know, native Houstonian, someone just grew up in this area, grew up at a time when Houston was growing. Houston's always been growing, by the way. Any of us those born in the 20s and the 40s, the 60s, and so forth, and even the 80s and 90s, and even nowadays, kids that are born now are going to see a very different Houston. It's nonstop growth. So that means that we have nonstop stories to tell. There's always something going on in this city, right? And that's kind of my story. I was able to see the city continue to grow and always ask those questions of what used to be there. I saw buildings being torn down at a time when I was concerned about that, even as a young person saying, well, what can we do to help stop this process? Because you literally see your history crumble before you. So I tell the story often of me going into the public library, the downtown building, the Texas Room at the Julie Idison building. This is this beautiful Spanish style building built in 1926. Our second official library after the 1904 Carnegie Library on Travis and McKinney Street. This is on McKinney and Smith Street, Thomas McKinney and Bagby as well. So that particular old library has all the archival materials and maps and photos and old city directories and just things that really, if you're curious about Houston, you go there first and foremost, because that's where all the records are kept. Now, there's several collections at Rice and U of H and other libraries that exist now, but at the earlier time in Houston's history, that was a place to be and place to go to. So I went there as a young person in junior high, learned about the history of Houston, very curious, inquisitive young person. And it's always stuck with me, reading old newspaper clippings, discovering old maps, and then really being able to chart out how a city grows. If you look at a map from the 20s or look at a map from the 1850s and then the 1890s and the 1920s, you're going to see a city continue to spread out. So that question I had in my mind was, well, how did it happen that way? And then from there, you look at the history of our business community and the history of our developing community. These are residents and folks of that nature, residential communities rather, that start to grow all throughout. And we focus so much on houses at the Heritage Society and the housing stock, the architecture of these homes and the architecture of different neighborhoods tells the story of how things grow. You look at older neighborhoods in Houston, you look at building materials that are used. Obviously, you're going to see wooden structures all throughout our early time periods, and then you're going to see brick structures of people of wealth. And then even as time goes on, that becomes the material of choice. So we use materials and we use neighborhoods and city growth and development to kind of tell a story about Houston's history in that way. So that's what fascinated me as a young person growing up, is what used to be here and why is it gone and how can we help stop that? So that got me involved, that got me started. And then my background in education and theatrics, working for the Alley Theater for 12 seasons and Theater Under the Stars for 5 years and Stages Theater and just different organizations like that got me involved with being a storyteller, if you will. And that kind of connects with being a historian, telling history, Houston history specifically, in a fun way. If you can make it fun and engaging as an educator, then you can make people remember things, right? Because they don't realize they're learning, but they're learning. So that's where the focus comes with working with young people and then working with even adults to teach about Houston history.
And besides learning, they actually get to understand why preservation is so important.
Absolutely. It matters. And a city that keeps growing, and I'm not anti-development. I think it's important for a city to grow, to be able to have new buildings being built and have more density or having certain things in different neighborhoods. Houston has no zoning. We're one of the only major cities with no zoning, which means that our city grew a certain way because there were no restrictions on the built environment. Besides deed restrictions, which typically only focus on residential areas. So that over time allowed the city to grow in a unique way. And that's kind of what we talk about too. So, but with the library and the collection that we have that we all have, we as in all of Houston, all these citizens own these historical images. We use these old black and white photos to be able to tell a story kind of about Houston's past. So black and white photos, old photos are what I use on all of my tours and experiences, so that people can learn about the history of Houston.
And there are amazing documents also at the Idison building that's part of the Houston Public Library. And so we're very fortunate that the Idison building is still standing, and also fortunate that a lot of other buildings are still there for us to enjoy, because a lot, like you mentioned earlier, a lot of buildings came down.
You're absolutely right. When it's a testament to Houston's growth, so good or bad, we're going to lose these structures. So we have to make sure we at least save the history back. So that's why the Heritage Society is so valuable, because they're the ones that recognize by saving these historic homes, putting them in one location, utilizing them as a teaching tool. And the very first house we actually moved to the park was in 1956. We got the Nichols Rice Cherry House. And that was significant because that particular home has several different famous owners, most notably Emma Richardson Cherry, a well-known artist, but also you have William Marsh Rice. So that house was the first one moved to the park and really kind of started the snowball effect of, well, what other houses can we bring to the table that can teach Houston history?
Yeah, I think the Heritage Society is best known for their homes in Sam Houston Park. I know that the Yates home is really important in that area also, plus some more homes. And so there's a lot of history there that can be told.
Absolutely. And we can learn so much from these people and their inhabitants, right? What kind of furniture they had back in those days, what kind of comfort restraints they have, right? I mean, there wasn't air conditioning in many homes. We only have one actually that was originally built with air conditioning, this beautiful 1905 Stati house, we call it. It was a home of great stature in the Westmoreland neighborhood, so they could afford to have air conditioning, and it was something that could be done. But really, you just learn about how a community evolved and lived in our city's past. And that's what's so special about that. I travel a lot. I travel to many cities in Texas for different lectures that I do, or a consult on different projects in Los Angeles and Miami and other places in Chicago, New York as well. And these places may have one or two historic homes in their city's parks or as teaching tools, but Houston has an astounding 10 historic structures in one location, different types of buildings from different types of social economic individuals. And what makes the Heritage Society unique is that we can really tell the story of cultural groups within Houston, whether it's the African-American experience, whether it's the Hispanic experience, whether it's the German experience, French experience, Swiss experience. You have so many different stories that we can tell because we have the property physically. So if you're a fan of someone like William Marsh Rice, in regards to going to Rice or learning about his legacy, well, you can actually go in his house, and that becomes something very rare. You mentioned the Yates house earlier, that beautiful 1870 house that we have. That particular home was moved to Heritage in 1994, and from the old historic Fourth Ward, and that becomes an amazing teaching tool for young kids in the Third Ward area and Fourth Ward area specifically, who, let's say they go to Yates High School in the Third Ward. Well, now they can actually go to Jack Yates's house. They can see his Bible, his cane. They can learn about his legacy in a way that is so rare and unique. And we're lucky to have his descendants serve on our board to really kind of tell the story. So,
wow, that's amazing that that his family is still there and can talk and maybe share stories about the family.
Yeah, and that's what makes it unique and rare, is that we have these living legacies through the homes themselves. So we're just very lucky. But like I said, the big thing for us is awareness. And we really appreciate being able to spread the message about the history of Houston through the Heritage Society at Sam Houston Park. And this question is often asked, where's Houston's History Museum? Where is it? When we don't have one. And the truth of it is we do have a Houston History Museum. It may not be called that. Our original name was the Harris County Heritage Society. And we really have been Houston's museum since 1954, preserving the history of the city.
Right. And it's not only the homes that you have. I guess the Heritage Society is known for the homes, but there's so much more that the Heritage Society offers to visitors.
Absolutely. Beyond the tours that we offer in the homes themselves, we've been known to do specialty events like the candlelight tour that happens in the holiday season where the homes are decorated. And you actually, if you already have taken a tour of the homes, we invite people to rediscover the house, if you will, during the holiday season, because we've often been able to tell the stories of how these different communities operated, these different cultures operated within the holiday season by going into their homes. And so that's been a treasured program at the Heritage Society for many years. And we brought it back a couple of years back under the leadership of Allison Bell, our executive director, and Manette Basil, our board president. They've been really instrumental in making sure that we bring back some of these great traditions. So beyond the great historical homes that we have there, which people can go inside, touch and feel and see and smell these homes, get a real good sensory overload experience of what history for the time period was like. But they can also go into the museum gallery space that we have there, newly renovated. We're really blessed to be able to have Barry Moore serve on our board, who is kind of a legend in the Houston Gensler / architectural scene. His father was also an architect, and his father actually was one of the founders of the Heritage Society, Harbin C. Moore, so a well-known architect here in Houston. So they, along with the Hergenstein Foundation, helped really hard to renovate this space. And Steve Lucchese serves on our board as our buildings chair. So the gallery's brand new. It's better than ever in regards to the amount of exhibits that we can have there. We had in February a rodeo exhibit, for example, that was something that's going to come back every single year. We've had a women's history, women's suffrage exhibit that talked about and actually listed all the names. I believe 1,800 plus women that registered to vote in Harris County back in 1920 when women had the right to vote. So to be able to, it's kind of like the wall of honor to see these ladies' names and realize, including of many which were African-American descent. So it's an example of women having a voice and the Heritage Society making sure that voice is heard through history. So we're just very blessed to be able to have that space, and it's always air conditioned, always cool. The homes are also air conditioned, which is important to note as well. But, if you want to escape the heat, that's a good place to go as our galleries.
And do you still have the Mexican history mural project going on?
Absolutely. That is a permanent mural and exhibit that's there. And this particular mural is valuable because it really is the only mural that we have in downtown Houston that really focuses on the history of the Mexican American experience. From the 20th century, the entire 20th century. So we're going to take you back to the start of it, really about 1910, when we had our large migration of members of the Mexican community. There's wonderful murals all throughout the Golfton area, for example, and Second Ward, as Segundo Barrio, and sprinkled all throughout Houston, but not in downtown, that really focuses on that. So that's important. And to this day, it is by far the largest concentration. Most people do know the Rebirth of a Nation, that's right there on Canal Street. That's a beautiful mural in the East End that talks about the struggle and the history of that community. But it's about the 20th century for us at the Heritage Society, which is where we had the most amount of strides and growth. My mom is from Mexico. So when it comes to being able to tell the story and the contribution of Mexican Americans in Houston, Texas, from many different standpoints, I serve on the board of LULAC Council 60, for example, and also on the board of the C60 Corporation. And we have that historic house on Bagby Street. Many people wanted that house to be moved to the Heritage Society. It's a house in the Westmoreland, an Avondale area of Houston specifically. But it's something that's not going to be moved now. It's going to stay in its original site. And that's really the birthplace of the civil rights movement for the Hispanic community in Houston. Back in 1934, at the creation of LULAC, people like Felix Morales and Felix Tijerina and John J. Herrera. And these are folks that started programs that were significant to letting people know in the 1930s that the Mexican population deserved to have basic rights and be treated differently than they were being treated at the time, because most people are familiar with some of the things that happened to the African-American community. Well, there were similar scenarios happening to other communities in regards to the prejudice that existed. And LULAC was so instrumental in reminding people that we needed to get together to have a voice.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know this Mexican history of Houston. So that's great that you're able to do this visual history through the mural project.
And what I love about the mural, too, is not only does it have, Lydia Mendoza's featured on the mural. We mentioned Felix Tijerina, even contemporary folks like Yolanda Black Navarro, for example, and like Gracie Sines, people that are still with us now. And why that's so valuable, we did a really fun TV segment with Maggie Flecknoe of Houston Happens and the Heritage Society and Mister McKinney's Historic Houston over at the Heritage Society about 3 or 4 years ago. And we actually had the pleasure of having Gracie Sines join us on television. So here she was, and Christina Mural, state representative, is on the mural as well. So to have these living legends be present as they get to talk to young people. At that particular time was kids from Sam Houston High School in the north side, but they were able to really be able to talk to the kids and just kind of tell their story. And people are going to listen when it's someone standing in front of you and they're also immortalized in a visual mural that they've, and along with so many other important people too. Mm-hmm. Why does Houston matter? Why is it a city that is the 4th largest city, hopefully soon to be 3rd largest city? And the secret, I think, to our success is so reflected in the Heritage Society's mission of telling all stories. Houston has always, since 1836, never really been a majority. It's always been a melting pot. It's always been a third of like different populations. And that's because it's always been a very welcoming city. So when you're a city that has somewhat of an even playing field, right? Houston doesn't really care how much money you have or who your pedigree your family is. All we care about in Houston is if you're willing to come here and work hard, then you're welcome to be part of the business community. And that's what's been Houston's success. It's allowed people to travel here and to make this their city. And that's kind of why Houston's so diverse. It's because it's so hospitable and so welcoming. We really are a pro-business city. And when you have that kind of mindset, you allow people to all care about working together. I always say this too, Houston doesn't really cares about one color, and that color is green. So as long as you're willing to work hard and contribute to the city's overall growth and business, then you're welcome here.
Does the Heritage Society offer any special programs for children?
Yes, we offer a variety of programs, and we've actually been doing that since 1954. It's been that whole concept of education has been really the strong cornerstone for the Heritage Society. We do Boy Scout badge workshops all the time. We do kids tours, children's tours through different schools. We invite all educators to come out there and reach out to us. That there's no better way to teach your 4th and 7th grade kids about Texas history than visiting our beautiful 1823 Old Place. This is a home. It's the oldest structure that we have on site. 1823 takes you back to Spanish Texas, Mexico, Texas. Takes you to a time period when, before the Republic of Texas days, really the Stephen F. Austin, Moses Austin days. So you get an idea of what Texas was like before Houston was here as a city. And that is the oldest home that we have on site, but of course not the most original. That particular home we had donated from the Clear Creek area, which is by the NASA area. So you can get an idea of the frontier days of Houston, basically where Sam Houston would have lived kind of back in those days. So that's a great teaching tool. And then as you talk about other parts of Texas history, yeah, you have that too.
So can kids register anytime, or how long are the programs?
Good question. So the programs that we offer, the Heritage Society, the tours that we do are mostly done through schools. So what makes the Heritage Society special too is those kids and educational programs that we love to be able to talk about. We've been doing that since 1954. And there's different ways that young people can come experience the Heritage Society. Certainly, first and foremost, the school educational tours that we offer that are when the school educators reach out to us saying we'd like to plan a field trip. The field trips are our most popular way to get large groups of kids here. But, everything we do at the Heritage Society is very family friendly. So a parent can bring their kids. Homeschool groups are also very popular here. And there's different types of teaching tools. I'll talk about the 1823 Old Place house that we have here. It's the oldest structure that we have on site. And that really takes you to the 1820s when this was Spanish Texas, Spanish Mexico, and the early days before Houston was Houston back in 1836. So if you want to learn about what life was like when Sam Houston was living here in this region, that 1823 log cabin Old Place home is a great teaching tool where kids can go inside the house, walk around, touch and feel. It's a very interactive space. And we also have a old general store. This is a replica of a general store that was in Egypt, Texas, that's inside the actual gallery space. So it's kind of reminds me of the Children's Museum, if you will, where the kids can walk around and touch and feel and be able to play with things in that space. So that kind of makes it special, unique, and different. In addition to that too, we have been known in the past to host educator workshops where we have 4th and 7th grade Texas history teachers that'll come in the Heritage Society and do different programs for their continuing education and credit hours. And that's been offered in the past, things that we'd like to also continue to bring back after COVID. So those are things. So I invite all educators to get to know us by subscribing to our email list online, definitely following our social media sites, Heritage Society on Instagram, the Heritage Society on Facebook, and going to heritagesociety.org on the website itself is going to get you all linked to this information where educators should be following us first and foremost. And we're really big about outside the box. Maybe they are talking about a certain time period, whether it's the oil boom, and they want to talk about the Sedai House and how that impacted the community. Maybe it's people that are tied into higher education, like William Marsh Rice's legacy through Rice University, that want to come bring their collegiate students or graduate students to the Heritage Society to tour that home. So there's lots we can learn about by just plugging into the buildings that are here and the history. We welcome all Boy Scout groups and even Girl Scouts and Brownies and things of that nature. We invite these young people to come here and learn about the history. The Boy Scouts specifically, they have different badges that they need to get, and we can offer programs that kind of connect with that. We've been very successful since the beginning of working with Boy Scouts and also volunteer opportunities for young people as well. And then we do the field trips through schools, and homeschools and educators reach out to us all the time to be able to book something at the Heritage Society, where we take the groups in different homes, and they can even have their lunch in our Conley Plaza by the mural, the mural that focuses on the history of the Mexican-American community of the 20th century. That can also be accomplished too by kind of just exploring the space. And we're in a beautiful park.
What is the most important thing that you want our listeners to know about the Heritage Society? Because it has so much to offer visitors and a lot to learn, a lot to understand. But what do you consider to be the most important?
Definitely our greatest asset is the homes that we have. Not because we've done something important for preservation. We've saved a piece of Houston history from these different neighborhoods. These houses would have otherwise been demolished, and we were able to acquire the homes through contributions and working with the city of Houston by being able to put them there. But the homes are invaluable. They are absolute teaching tools of the highest degree. There's no substitute for going into a space that somebody's lived in. It's the most intimate and personal thing that we have as human beings, our domicile, where we reside, where we sleep, where we eat, we break bread, where we learn and relax and make memories of our families. And the Heritage Society offers that. And we just happen to have these homes of folks like Eugene Pilot and Jack Yates and Joseph Stedeye and William Marsh Rice. And just Zariah Noble. These are people that have shaped this city in such a way that it gives us great honor to be able to tell their stories. So that to me is our greatest gift to the city, is that we have these assets that if they were gone, you'd be learning about this at the library, but in books. And it's different. It's way different to be able to go there. And we need the help of the public. And we want to remind them that we are a nonprofit like every other nonprofit out there that does need resources and funds. And I was always told you can give time, treasury, or talent. There's different ways that you can contribute. And just coming to the Heritage Society and learning about us is a way to contribute to your gain knowledge of Houston's history. And if people are in such a position to be able to contribute financially, we always welcome that as a nonprofit like everybody else. But we also want to make sure people know that in different types of climates, it's hard enough people that have homes taking care of their house, right? They've got issues with their foundation or their AC or their windows or doors. Well, we have that times 10 houses, right? So we're always reminding people that the city only helps us out so much, that we are a nonprofit that wants people to realize that we want to keep these homes in great shape for another 100 and plus years.
Definitely. And also, does the Heritage Society, is it available for private events?
Absolutely. That's another great way that people can support us. People can support us through private events, renting out the space. There's multiple spaces that you can rent out. You can rent the homes in some capacity. We've had to have a conversation about that in regards to what's going to be done inside the homes, but you can definitely have an event centered around our church that we have, our beautiful 1891 St. John Church. Which is a German, Swiss, and German craftsmanship built church back in 1891 in Northwest Houston that we acquired in the 1960s, late 60s, and brought to the Heritage Society. There's also the gallery space we mentioned earlier as a prime space, and even our Conley Plaza, outdoor Conley Plaza, is a great space. And Governor Conley, Houstonian by choice, would move here and make this his space. And also, he was famously governor of Texas during the JFK assassination. So he's somebody who has a lot of Texas history and obviously served as in cabinet president position. So
definitely. It's the Heritage Society to me is a beautiful space. A lot of interesting stories that it has to say and that people can get, and especially the homes. Is there an admission fee to go into see the exhibits or the homes?
Yes, there is a nominal fee. It does fluctuate depending on it's typically around $5, $15, $10. All these are nominal accessible fees that we make sure. There are lots of free events. The museums are free. The gallery's free. The houses will be open for that as well. The Houston History Bus will also be free. There'll be cake with the mayor there, and there'll be refreshments that are also free. So we do a variety of free events. And then when we do events that there's a charge, it will be nominal. Something that we think that most people can take care of. And then I don't think we've ever actually turned anybody away. Sometimes you've got visitors coming from different countries that may not have the correct currency or maybe just want to take a quick peek. And we've always been very welcoming. Allison Bell and the team at the Heritage Society make sure that everybody, no one's turned away.
Well, I want to thank you so much for talking to us about the importance of the Heritage Society and what it offers the public, visitors, international visitors, and also the residents here in Houston, because it really is an incredible place to visit.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me.
And thank you all as well for joining me for this edition of Spotlight Houston. Please stay in touch with me and let me know if you have any show ideas as well. Thank you.